My name is Mary Wilson. I am 66 years old, and until recently, people described me as the most patient woman in Chicago, the type of woman who smooths out the wrinkles in other people's tempers. Perhaps that is why what happened that afternoon took me so completely by surprise. The lemon scent of furniture polish and the cupcakes I had baked that morning floated through the living room. Outside, the Midwest heat pressed against the windows, heavy and slow, as it always is in July. My grandson Leo was sitting cross-legged on the rug, his playpieces scattered across the floor. "Grandma, you're cheating," he said, half laughing, half serious, as we moved pieces on the checkerboard. I smiled, the way grandmothers are supposed to, and leaned forward to move my piece. Before I could touch the board, his small hand rose and struck my face, an open, dry slap. The sound resonated clean and flat, like a book snapping shut. For 1 second, I did not move. My earring fell onto the rug. The sting spread across my cheek, hot and immediate. Unreal. Robert looked up from the sofa, his phone still in his hand. "He's just playing, Mum," he said, smiling as if it were funny. Sharon, sitting beside him with her iced coffee, clapped her hand. "Go ahead. Hit her back if you dare," she said. "Maybe she will learn that way." Leo laughed, waiting for my reaction. I did not react. The room seemed to tilt slightly, as if the air itself had shifted. My throat tightened, but no sound came out. I reached for my fallen earring, my hand trembling just enough to give me away. "It is okay," I heard myself say. My voice was weak, but firm. "No harm done." Robert shrugged and returned to his phone. Sharon took a sip of her coffee. Already navigating his screen, Leo moved his pieces again, humming. The moment dissolved for them as quickly as it had arisen, like a match being blown out. I walked to the kitchen. The tiles felt cold under my bare feet. I opened the faucet, pretending to wash a cup, watching the water blur and shine while my reflection twisted in the stainless steel sink. My cheek still throbbed where his hand had landed. A light, unconcerned laugh came from the living room. It filled the house like humidity fills the air, dense and hard to breathe. I pressed my palm against my face, feeling the heat there, and for the first time in a long time, I stayed quiet, not because I was calm, but because I no longer knew how to speak. In that silence, the house suddenly felt too big for me, too noisy, and yet somehow too empty. The next morning, the sunlight spilled onto the kitchen tiles, dim and pale. I moved quietly, putting the coffee maker on the stove and folding yesterday's dish towel, smoothing its edges until they were perfect. The house was awake, but indifferent. I could hear the low murmur of Robert's voice from the living room, half attentive to a work call. Sharon's laugh rose above it, that bright kind of laugh she used when talking to online friends. Leo was sitting at the table with a bowl of cereal in front of him, his finger tapping a tablet. He did not look up when I passed behind him. I waited for a "good morning," but it did not come. The silence between us stretched, heavy and fragile. I began to wipe down the countertop, although it was already spotless. Cleaning had always been my way of ordering chaos, of feeling useful, but now the simple rhythm of the chores no longer felt like a comfort. It felt like erasing myself. My hands moved automatically, rinsing, stacking, while a small voice inside me whispered that I could disappear from this house, and maybe days would pass before they noticed. When I brought Leo a clean napkin, he nodded once without looking up. "Thanks," he mumbled. The word was small, almost mechanical, but I caught it and held it close. The way you hold something fragile that is already breaking. Robert passed through the kitchen, adjusting his tie, phone to his ear. "Mum, can you pick up the dry cleaning later?" he asked, without waiting for my answer. Sharon followed him, leaving a trail of perfume like a border I should not cross. When the door closed, the silence that remained was not peaceful. It was hollow. I stood there for a long time, surrounded by the faint hum of the refrigerator, the echo of voices fading down the driveway, and the lingering ache of a house that no longer felt like mine. The night settled over Chicago like a heavy blanket, bringing little relief from the day's heat. I was sitting on the patio, looking at the city lights in the distance. An occasional breeze from the lake was my only solace. From inside came the voices of Robert and Sharon, arguing about their weekend plans. Sharon wanted to go to Miami with her friends. Robert preferred a new restaurant on the waterfront where he could show off his business contacts. Neither of them mentioned that this would mean leaving Leo with me all weekend. Again, I ran a finger over the rim of the chamomile tea mug I had made for myself. It was already cold, forgotten, as I got lost in my thoughts. "Mary, have you seen my blue shirt?" Robert's voice startled me. He was at the patio door, his brow furrowed as he checked his phone. "I ironed it this morning. It is in your closet," I replied. "I do not see it," he said without looking up. "I left it right up front, hanging on the red hanger," I insisted. Robert sighed as if he were dealing with a child. "I already looked there. If you find it, let me know." Before I could answer, Sharon appeared behind him. "You have not found the shirt?" she asked. "Mom says she ironed it, but it is not where she says," he replied. Sharon looked at me and rolled her eyes. "I'm sure she put it somewhere else and forgot. She has been really spacey lately." They spoke about me as if I were not present, as if I were just another piece of furniture on the patio. I got up and went to Robert's bedroom. The shirt was exactly where I had said, hanging on the red hanger, right in the front of the closet. I took it and returned to the living room where they were now sitting, arguing about restaurants. "Here is your shirt," I said, holding out the garment. Robert barely glanced at it. "Oh, there it is. Thanks." Not a word of apology, no acknowledgement that I had been right, just an automatic thanks, as hollow as the one Leo had given me that morning. I went back to the patio and sat down, but the peace I had felt before was gone. In its place was a growing feeling of invisibility. When had this started? When had they stopped seeing me? Sharon's laugh sounded from inside, sharp and unconcerned, responding to some joke on her phone. That laugh, which used to seem cheerful, now sounded hollow, as if it were mocking my silence. Leo's slap now seemed a symbol of something larger, the way this whole family had been slapping me with their indifference for years. And I had allowed it with my silence. The following days passed in a kind of fog. I continued my routine, preparing breakfasts no one thanked me for, cleaning rooms no one noticed, being present in conversations where no one truly listened to me. But something had changed in me. I started to really observe the dynamics of this house that I had built with so much love. Robert arrived every afternoon and left his briefcase and keys by the door, expecting me to pick them up. He never asked about my day, but he expected me to listen to every detail of his. Sharon spent hours on the phone with her friends, but barely addressed 2 words to me in a row. And Leo? My dear grandson had learned from his parents to treat me like a maid, not his grandmother. One afternoon, while I was sorting clean laundry, I heard Sharon in the living room talking to a friend on the phone. "We are not selling yet. The house is worth more every year, and besides, it is free to live here. Mary takes care of everything." Her words hit me like stones. It is free to live here. As if my house, my work, my presence had no value. As if I were merely a convenient saving on their expenses. That night, while everyone was asleep, I went out to the small backyard where Joe, my late husband, had planted an apple tree decades ago. Now it was huge, its branches laden with fruit that no one but me picked. "What am I doing, Joe?" I whispered to the stars. "What has our home become?" There was no answer, just the soft rustle of the apple tree leaves in the night breeze. The next day, Sharon left Leo with me without warning. She had a hair appointment she could not miss. When I tried to explain that I had plans with my friend Doris to go to the farmer's market, she looked at me as if I had spoken Chinese. "But Mum, you know it is my beauty day. It always has been. Can you not go to the market another day?" "I mentioned it to you a week ago, Sharon," I said. "Well, I do not remember. Anyway, Leo will be fine with you. He would rather stay home than come with me. And just like that, without further discussion, she left. Leo did not seem bothered. He settled on the couch with his tablet and completely ignored me. I called Doris to apologize. "It is no big deal," she said. "Why do you not tell them you cannot? You have your own life, Mary." "They are my family," I replied, though the words sounded empty even to me. "And what are you to them?" Doris asked. I had no answer. That afternoon, while Leo was playing and I was preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. It was Anthony, our neighbour, a kind widower who lived 2 houses down. "Mary, I brought you some tomatoes from my garden," he said with a smile. "I know you always liked the organic ones for your sauces." I was surprised by the gesture. It had been so long since anyone had thought about what I liked or what mattered to me. "Thank you, Anthony. They are beautiful," I said, genuinely touched. "You are coming to the book club tomorrow. We are reading that book by Alice Walker that you loved so much." Before I could answer, Leo appeared beside me. "Grandma, I am hungry. When is dinner going to be ready?" Anthony looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Pity? Comprehension? "Too bad. I will see you tomorrow, perhaps," I said, though I knew I probably would not go. Someone would need something from me. When I closed the door, I stood there, looking at the tomatoes in my hands. Perfect red, given with consideration. A small reminder that outside this house, a world existed where I was seen, where I was Mary, not just Grandma or Mum. "Who was that man?" Leo asked. "A friend," I replied. "A good friend." Leo shrugged, quickly losing interest, and returned to his tablet. But I stayed there with the tomatoes in my hands, feeling something fundamental changing inside me. Sometimes, when the house falls silent, memories come easier than sleep. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, long after everyone else had gone to bed, staring at the faint ring my tea mug had left on the wood. The silence took me back to the years when everything was harder, but somehow kinder. Henry was gone when I was 34 years old. 1 minute he was repairing the roof of our first house, and the next, he was no longer there. A fall and a heartbeat stopping together. I remember holding Robert that night, his small body trembling against mine as the phone slipped from my hand. He was only 9, too young to understand death, but old enough to feel that the world had broken. We made it work somehow. I took a second job at the public library on weekends and graded school papers at night while Robert slept. Every dollar I saved went into a jar labeled college. Although most months it was almost empty, I missed every block party, every movie, every small luxury, but I told myself it was worth every sacrifice because it bought him a better future. And for a while it seemed it did. Robert grew into a bright, confident man. He studied business at the University of Chicago with a small scholarship and my help. He married Sharon, started his own import business. I smiled at every milestone, pretending not to notice how little he called, how visits turned into obligations. I thought love was enough to bridge the silent distance between us. Now, sitting in the same house I had maintained for decades, I realized that love alone does not guarantee respect. Maybe it never did. Respect must be taught, modeled, earned, and I had been too busy keeping the peace to demand it. My fingers brushed the small photo album I kept in a kitchen drawer. I opened it to the page where Robert, barely 10, was smiling with his first math award. His eyes sparkled with pride as he looked up at me, seeking my approval. Where had that boy gone? The one who valued my opinion, my presence. I turned to another photo. Robert at his college graduation. I was next to him in a blue dress I had saved for months to buy. My arm was around his waist, but his body was already slightly turned towards Sharon, who had just entered his life. The kitchen light flickered, as if even it wanted to sleep by now. But sleep kept evading me. My mind went over every moment, every small decision that had led me to this point. "Do you remember, Henry?" I whispered into the void. "Do you remember when we thought the hardest thing would be paying the mortgage? We never imagined this." The day Robert and Sharon asked me to move in with them had appeared a gesture of love. "It is too big a house for you alone, Mom," Robert had said, "and with the baby on the way, your help would be great for us." I sold my small condo downtown, the one Henry and I had bought with so much effort, and gave them the money for the down payment on this bigger house. An investment in our family, Robert called it. In that moment, I felt needed, valued. Leo was born, and for a while there was genuine joy. I loved rocking him, singing him the same lullabies I had sung to his father. But as he grew, I noticed how Sharon subtly undermined my authority. "Do not listen to Grandma, sweetie. She is from another era," she would say when I tried to set limits. The morning light had changed when I finally got up. I washed the tea mug, placed it gently on the shelf, and looked out the window at the street. Somewhere between the bustle of the years and the weight of giving, I had raised a man who could laugh at his own mother's pain, and I had allowed his wife to teach my grandson that it was okay to slap his grandmother. But something had shifted. Leo's slap had broken something inside me, but it had also awakened something. A spark of dignity I thought was lost, a voice that whispered, "Enough is enough." That night, after the house settled into its usual silence, I found myself at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the gaps between my thoughts. Robert had convinced me years ago to put all my financial affairs in order. "I will take care of it, Mum," he had said. "It is better if everything is organized." At the time, it seemed like a gesture of love, a son looking out for his mother's future. Now I wondered what else was behind it. I opened my online bank account. I had not checked it in months, trusting Robert to let me know if anything required my attention. The screen lit up with numbers and transactions that seemed strangely unfamiliar. My eyes settled on a series of automatic transfers. St. Jude Academy, tuition, €3,000, about $3,200, every month for 3 years. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. St. Jude Academy was the prestigious private school Leo attended, a school Sharon claimed they paid for with income from Robert's business. I calculated quickly. $3,000 a month for 3 years. $108,000, taken automatically from the account where Henry had left his life insurance, the account meant to sustain me in my old age. I kept exploring. There was more. Chicago Sports Club, annual fee, Lakeshore Summer Camp, Wellington English Academy. All of Leo's activities that Sharon boasted about paying for, all funded with my money. The feeling of betrayal hit me like a physical wave. My breathing became shallow. My hands trembled as I navigated the transactions. More than $150,000 in total, systematically withdrawn from my savings without my explicit knowledge. I vaguely remembered signing some papers years ago. "They are just bank formalities, Mum," Robert had said, "to organize your finances." I had signed an authorization for these transfers, or Robert had forged my signature. I made a decision. I called the bank's customer service. After verifying my identity, I asked them to cancel all automatic transfers from my account. "Are you sure, Mrs. Wilson?" the operator asked. "These are recurring payments established a long time ago." "Completely sure," I replied, my voice firmer than it had been in years. "They will be cancelled immediately," the woman confirmed. "Do you wish to set up any other type of control over your account?" I thought for a moment. Yes, I want to receive SMS alerts every time there is any movement in this account, and I want to change all my access codes. After hanging up, I stared at the computer screen. The next payment to the school was scheduled for the following week. Now it would not be made. I thought of the reaction Sharon would have when she received the notification from the school, of the look on Robert's face when he discovered his free money flow had been cut off. But more than vengeance, what I felt was a strange calm, a clarity I had not experienced in years. My hands, which had trembled with the initial surprise, were now steady as I closed the laptop. I got up and walked to the window. The lights of Chicago blinked in the distance. The city never slept, always moving, always changing, as I should have been doing. Dignity is not asked for, It is demanded, my mother used to say. How right she was. For years, I had confused unconditional love with unconditional acceptance of mistreatment. I had thought that giving without limits was generosity, when in reality, it was enabling abuse. I returned to the table and took a notebook from the drawer. With clear, firm handwriting, I began to make a list. 1. Consult with a lawyer about my rights in this house. 2. Open a new bank account solely in my name. 3. Research housing options for seniors. 4. Talk to Anthony about the book club. I looked at my list and added a final point. 5. Do not give explanations until I am asked for them. The house was dark, except for the warm glow of the kitchen light and the pale blue of my computer screen. Outside, the humid Chicago night pressed against the windows, the crickets singing their constant tune. I felt strangely light, as if I had dropped a weight that I had been carrying for so long that it had become a part of me. The decision was not a punishment, it was a reclamation. A declaration that my generosity was not a blank check for cruelty or apathy. I leaned back in the chair and let my hands rest on the table, warm and steady now, no longer trembling with frustration or silent rage. The confrontation would come soon, I knew, but for the first time in years, I did not fear it. I felt prepared, centered, resolved. In the silence of the Chicago night, while the rest of the house slept, unaware of the change that was approaching, the invisible woman was finally beginning to become visible. To myself, first. To them, very soon. A week had passed since my decision to cancel the automatic payments. Exactly 7 days where every sunrise woke me with a new feeling in my chest, one of determination. The calendar on the kitchen wall marked the days like a silent countdown. I knew the school notification would arrive soon. It was just a matter of time. That morning, I got up earlier than usual. The sun was just beginning to peek over the rooftops of Chicago, painting the sky with orange and pink streaks. Instead of immediately starting to prepare breakfast for everyone, as I had done for years, I poured myself a cup of coffee and went out to the small patio. "Good morning, Mary," Anthony called from his yard. He was watering his geraniums, already dressed for the day. "Good morning, Anthony," I replied, raising my mug to him. "It is a beautiful day. Are you coming to the book club today? We are finishing the novel by Toni Morrison." I considered it for a moment. Before, I would have automatically declined the invitation, knowing Sharon would expect me to pick up Leo from school, or Robert would urgently need a shirt ironed. "I think so," I said, surprising Anthony and myself. "I would love to." His smile lit up his face, creating small wrinkles around his kind eyes. "Wonderful. I will see you at 5 o'clock at the neighborhood library." When I went back inside, Sharon was in the kitchen, her brow furrowed as she looked at her phone. "Who are you talking to?" she asked without looking up. "To Anthony, our neighbor," I replied, starting to prepare the batter for the cupcakes Leo loved so much. "The old man who lives on the corner." Her tone was dismissive. "He is 68 years old, barely 2 more than me," I said with a calm that seemed to disconcert her. "And yes, he invited me to book club this afternoon." Sharon finally looked up from her phone. "Book club? But you have to pick up Leo today. I have a hair appointment." In the past, I would have conceded immediately. I would have cancelled my plans, absorbed her inconvenience, as I always did. But today was different. "I cannot today, Sharon. I have plans," I said, keeping my voice soft but firm as I added vanilla to the batter. "Plans?" she repeated, as if the word were foreign. "What plans could a woman your age have that are more important than your grandson?" I felt the familiar sting of her words, the barely veiled contempt. But this time, instead of shrinking, I straightened up. "I have plans with friends. Can you ask Robert to pick up Leo or hire someone?" Sharon looked at me as if I had grown a second head. "Are you feeling okay? You are acting strange." "I am perfectly fine," I replied, pouring the batter into the molds. "I am just making plans with friends, like any other person does." After breakfast, I noticed small changes in my behavior that seemed to baffle my family. I did not pick up the clothes Robert left strewn in the bathroom. I did not offer to run an errand Sharon mentioned needing. I did not rush to attend to Leo when he called from his room asking for help finding a toy. Small assertions of independence, invisible to anyone outside this house, but seismic within it. Mid-morning, Robert called from his office. "Mum, can you bring me the blue folder I left on the table? I need it for a noon meeting." In the past, I would have dropped everything I was doing, taken a bus, and crossed the city to bring him what he needed. Today, my answer was different. "I am sorry, honey. I cannot today, but there are quick messenger services that can do it." The silence on the other end of the line was eloquent. "Are you angry about something, Mum?" he finally asked. "Not at all," I replied with sincerity. "I just have other commitments today." After hanging up, I stared at the phone. Robert had not asked what those commitments were. He had not shown interest in my plans. His concern was only for the inconvenience my refusal caused him. At 4:30, I dressed with more care than usual. I chose a light blue dress I had not worn in years, put on a little makeup, and wore the silver necklace Henry had given me for our 20th anniversary. As I was leaving the door, I ran into Sharon, who was returning from shopping. She looked me up and down. "Where are you going, all dressed up?" Her tone was half mockery, half genuine surprise. "To book club, as I told you this morning." "And who is going to make dinner?" I paused at the door. "There is lasagna in the refrigerator. You just need to heat it for 20 minutes at 350 degrees. Her mouth opened, but for once she found no words. I took advantage of her silence to leave, closing the door behind me with a feeling of freedom I had not experienced in years. The book club was revealing. For 2 hours, I was simply Mary, not the mother, not the grandmother, not the servant, just a woman with opinions about literature, politics, and life. Anthony introduced me to the others warmly, and I discovered that my thoughts were valued, my comments received with genuine interest. When I returned home, the kitchen was a mess. No one had heated the lasagna. Instead, there were leftovers from takeout. "Grandma is back," Leo announced when I walked in. He was in his pajamas, playing with his tablet on the couch, long past his usual bedtime. "We ordered pizza," Robert said from his armchair. "We did not know how the oven works." I could not help the ironic smile. A 41-year-old man with an MBA who runs his own company, incapable of following simple instructions to heat lasagna. "Did you have a good time?" I asked, leaving my purse on the coat rack. "We would have been better off if you had been here to take care of Leo," Sharon said, not bothering to look at me. "He is impossible when he has homework to do." "I will help him tomorrow," I replied, without accepting her implied guilt. "Now I am going to rest. Good night." I felt their eyes on my back as I went up the stairs. Confusion, annoyance, bewilderment. The invisible woman was beginning to become visible, and they did not know how to react. In my room, I sat down at the small vanity and took off my earrings. The face staring back at me in the mirror looked different, more alive. There was colour in my cheeks, a sparkle in my eyes that I had forgotten. "This is just the beginning," I whispered to my reflection. "The storm will arrive soon, but I am ready." The small backyard had been my secret refuge for years, and the only space in the house where I was rarely bothered. Sharon considered it too hot, Robert too boring, and Leo too devoid of technology to be interesting. That morning, a week after my visit to the book club, I went out early with my gardening gloves and a renewed sense of purpose. The apple tree Henry had planted was thriving, but the rest of the garden had been neglected due to my lack of time and energy. I began to pull the weeds that had grown between the patio tiles. Every invasive plant I ripped out seemed to symbolize an abuse I had tolerated, a lack of respect I had silently accepted. "Good morning, neighbor." Anthony's voice startled me. He was standing by the fence separating our yards, holding a pot with a plant I did not immediately recognize. "I brought you a jasmine cutting," he said, handing me the pot. "I thought it would look nice in this corner next to your apple tree." The smell at night is wonderful. I took the pot, touched by his thoughtfulness. Thank you, Anthony. That is a lovely gesture. I saw you working and thought perhaps you were renovating the garden. I am renovating a lot of things, I replied, surprising myself with the honesty of my words. Anthony smiled, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. I am glad to hear that. It is always a good time for new beginnings. We talked for a while about plants and books. Anthony had been a literature professor before retiring, and his passion for Hemingway, Fitzgerald, and Walker was contagious. He recommended several titles and promised to lend me one the next time we met at the book club. I did not realize we were being watched until I heard the back door slam shut. Sharon had come out onto the patio and was looking at us with an expression I could not decipher. "Good morning," Anthony greeted cordially. Sharon barely nodded in his direction before turning to me. "Mary, I need you to go buy coffee. We are out." Her tone allowed no discussion. It was an order, not a request. "There is coffee in the pantry behind the cereals," I replied, returning to my plants. "I bought it yesterday." Sharon seemed momentarily disconcerted. I did not see it. "Is it not there?" I insisted, without moving from my garden. Anthony, sensing the tension, politely excused himself. "I will leave you to your business. Mary, enjoy the jasmine." When he left, Sharon crossed her arms. "Since when are you and that old man such good friends?" "Anthony Corrigan has been my neighbour for years, and now he is also my friend from the book club." Sharon snorted. "Book club? Is that what they call it now?" I straightened up, putting the pruning shears aside. "What are you implying, Sharon?" "Nothing. Nothing," she said with false innocence. "Just that it is unusual to see you so dressed up to go see a friend." The insinuation hurt more than I expected, not just for what it implied about Anthony and me, but because it revealed how low Sharon's opinion of me was. "I am 66 years old, Sharon, not 106, I said calmly, "and even if I had something more than friendship with Anthony, it would be my business, not yours." Her eyes widened in surprise. Clearly, she did not expect this answer. "I am just saying you should be careful. People talk." "Let them talk," I replied, returning to my plants. I stopped caring what other people think a long time ago. Sharon went inside the house, but I knew this was not over. That afternoon, when Robert returned from work, I heard fragments of their conversation in the kitchen. "Acting strange, that old Anthony. I think she is having some kind of crisis." Their voices dropped when I entered the kitchen. I looked at both of them while putting water to boil for my tea. "If you have something to tell me," I said calmly, "I would prefer you do it directly instead of whispering behind my back." Robert had the decency to look ashamed. Sharon, not so much. "We are worried about you, that is all," Robert said. "You have been acting different." "Different how?" I asked, genuinely curious about how they interpreted my small acts of independence. "Distracted," Sharon said. "Forgetful. You do not clean up after Leo, you do not do the shopping like before, and now this sudden interest in gardening and that man." "My name is Mary," I said, surprising them. "Not Mum, not Grandma, not the woman who cleans and cooks for free. Mary Wilson. I have my own interests, my own friends, and a life I have neglected for too long to cater to the needs of this house." The silence that followed was profound. Sharon and Robert exchanged glances, as if confirming their suspicions that something was very wrong with me. "Is this because of Leo?" Robert finally asked. "Because of the slap the other day, Mum. I told you he was just playing." I felt a pang of renewed pain. They still did not understand. "No," I said softly. "It is not about the slap. It is about your laugh afterwards. It is about Sharon's comment. It is about years of small disrespects that I ignored, thinking that was how I showed my love." I took my mug of tea and went out to the garden, leaving them speechless. The afternoon sun bathed my small oasis, and the jasmine Anthony had given me seemed to be already putting down roots in its new home. That night, I dreamed of Henry. We were on Lake Michigan Beach, young again, with the lake breeze blowing through our hair. "Dance with me, Mary," he said, extending his hand to me. And we danced barefoot on the sand, not caring who might see us. I woke up with tears in my eyes, but a smile on my lips. I had forgotten that feeling of carefree freedom, of pure joy. I got up, and instead of going directly to the kitchen, as I always did, I opened the old trunk I kept in the back of my closet. Inside were the treasures of my former life: photographs, letters, and the small portable record player Henry had given me for our 5th wedding anniversary. Carefully, I took out a vinyl record protected in its sleeve, B.B. King. I placed it on the turntable, and keeping the volume low so as not to wake the others, I let the blues guitar notes fill my room. I moved slowly to the rhythm of the music, closing my eyes, remembering how Henry and I used to dance in our small living room after Robert was asleep. "Life is meant to be lived, Mary," he used to tell me, "not endured." When had I forgotten that? At what point had I stopped living my life to simply exist in others' lives? Mid-morning, I made an impulsive decision. Instead of preparing lunch for when everyone returned, I went out for a walk. I walked to the old downtown neighborhood with its narrow streets and colorful buildings. I stopped at a small bookstore I had not visited in years. "Welcome," the clerk, a young woman with red glasses, greeted me. "Looking for anything in particular?" "Something that makes me feel alive," I replied without thinking. The woman smiled. "I have just what you need." I left with a copy of The Color Purple, a book I had loved in my youth but had never reread. I also bought a blue-covered notebook and an elegant pen. At a nearby cafe, I ordered a latte and a piece of almond cake. I sat by the window, opened my new notebook, and started writing. Things I love and had forgotten. The list grew: blues music, Alice Walker's books, the taste of fresh coffee, the scent of jasmine at dusk, the feeling of sand between my toes. Conversations about ideas, and not just household chores. I was so engrossed in my writing that I did not notice the passage of time. When I looked at the clock, it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Leo would be back from school. Robert and Sharon would be wondering where their lunch was. For a moment, I felt the old pang of guilt, the reflex to put their needs before mine. But then I remembered Robert's laugh after Leo's slap, Sharon's mockery. I ordered another coffee and kept writing. When I finally returned home, it was almost 5 o'clock. I found Sharon in the kitchen, trying to help Leo with his homework while also trying to prepare something to eat. She looked frustrated and out of her element. "Where have you been?" she demanded to know as soon as she saw me. "Out for a walk," I replied calmly, setting my purse and purchases on the table. "Out for a walk? We had to order takeout for lunch, and I had to miss my spa appointment to help Leo with his homework." I felt a moment of satisfaction watching her deal with the responsibilities I usually took on without complaint. "I am sorry," I said, though I did not really mean it. "I should have let you know I would not be back for lunch." "Should you?" she repeated incredulously. "It is your obligation to be here. What kind of grandmother abandons her grandson like that?" Leo looked up from his notebooks, his eyes moving between us. "I have not abandoned anyone, Sharon," I said, keeping my voice calm for Leo. "I just took an afternoon for myself, something everyone in this house does regularly without asking permission or apologizing afterwards." Sharon seemed about to reply when Robert entered the kitchen. "What is going on? I can hear you from the entrance." "Your mother has decided she no longer needs to fulfill her responsibilities," Sharon said. "She went out all day without warning, without leaving food prepared, without picking up Leo." "Technically," I interjected, "picking up Leo has never been my responsibility. It is yours. I have done it as a favor, not an obligation." Robert looked at me as if he did not recognize me. "Mum, what is happening to you? First the book club, then that man in the garden, and now this." "What is happening to me," I said, "is that I am finally remembering who I am, not just your mother or grandmother or cook or unpaid employee. I am Mary Wilson, and I have a right to my own time and my own interests." An awkward silence filled the kitchen. Leo watched everything with wide eyes. "Why do we not talk somewhere else?" Robert suggested. giving a meaningful look towards Leo. "There is nothing to talk about privately," I replied. "I am not sick, I am not senile, and I am not having a crisis. I am just remembering how to live." I took my purchases and went up to my room, leaving them all perplexed. I knew I was causing an earthquake in the family dynamic, but I could no longer continue to be the person who sacrificed her own existence for the convenience of others who did not value her. That night, I opened my blue notebook again and reread my list of 3 priorities. The first was the most important: to regain my financial independence. I had been naive to allow Robert to handle my finances. It was time to take control. The second, to consider other housing options. This house, despite being partly paid for with my money, had never felt like my home. It was Sharon's territory, Robert's kingdom. I was just a useful guest. The third gave me chills as I wrote it, but I knew it was necessary. Prepare for the reaction when they discover about the school payments. I put the notebook under my pillow and turned off the light. In the darkness, I could feel my old self fading away, giving way to a Mary who had been dormant for too long. The tension in the house was palpable. Over the following days, Sharon barely spoke to me, communicating through written notes or via Robert. "Tell your mother we need more milk," she would say to Robert, even if I was in the same room. Robert fluctuated between contained rage, clumsy attempts at manipulation, and moments of genuine confusion. "Mum, can we talk about what is happening?" he would occasionally try. "I am discovering who I am beyond this house," I would reply. "There is nothing to worry about." Leo was the one who adapted best to the changes. At first, he seemed unsettled by my new routines, by the fact that I was no longer constantly available for his needs. But he soon began to show a curiosity that surprised me. "Grandma, what are you reading?" he asked me one afternoon, finding me in the garden with my copy of The Colour Purple. "It is a story about a woman's journey through many years," I explained. "About love, time, and how sometimes we repeat the mistakes of our ancestors." "Can I sit with you?" he asked. "Of course," I said, making space for him on the garden bench. To my surprise, he stayed silent beside me for almost half an hour, playing with his handheld console while I read. It was a different kind of company than I was used to with him, not based on service and demand, but on simple shared presence. That afternoon, while Leo was taking a nap and Sharon was out at her Pilates class, I decided to organize some papers in my room. Looking for a folder, I opened a desk drawer in Robert's office, something I rarely did. Under a pile of bills, I found a document with an official letterhead: property valuation, 12 Botanicals Canyon Street. Our address. With a racing heart, I pulled out the document. It was a professional appraisal of the house, dated just a month ago. The estimated value took my breath away: $450,000. Beneath it was another document, a preliminary contract with a real estate agency, signed by Robert and Sharon. They were planning to sell the house. My house. The home I had helped buy with the money from the sale of my condo, and they had not had the decency to mention it to me. My hands trembled as I returned the documents to their exact place, making sure no one would notice I had seen them. The betrayal was like a physical weight on my chest. What were they planning to do with me? Find me a retirement home, give me a small sum from the sale, and send me to a tiny apartment? I returned to my room and sat on the bed, trying to control my breathing. The anger I felt was different from anything I had ever experienced before. It was not hot and explosive, but cold and calculating. In that moment, all my doubts about my recent actions vanished. I had done the right thing by cancelling the school payments, by reclaiming my time and space, by starting to set boundaries. But now I saw that I needed to do more, much more. I took out my cell phone, and with still trembling fingers, I looked up the number a friend from the book club had given me. Isabel Thompson, a lawyer specializing in elder rights. "I need an urgent consultation," I told her when she answered. "It is about my rights in a family property." We agreed on an appointment for the next day. Then I called my bank and scheduled a visit. It was time to find out exactly how much was left of my savings and what my options were. As I closed my blue notebook, I heard the front door open and close. Sharon had returned from her class. Her voice and Robert's mixed downstairs. We cannot wait much longer. The real estate market is at its best. We have to decide what to do with her. Their words floated up to my room, confirming my worst suspicions. They were talking about me as if I were an old piece of furniture that needed to be relocated before a move. I sat by my window looking out at the garden where my jasmine was starting to grow next to Henry's apple tree. Suddenly, I remembered the words he used to say when we faced difficulties. Mary, no one can take your dignity away unless you hand it over. For years, I had handed over my dignity in small pieces. For love, for peace, for fear of loneliness. But no more. The cold anger inside me crystallized into a clear resolution. Not only would I defend what was mine, but I would teach them that their actions had consequences. And the first lesson was about to arrive. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. White, official, with the elegant logo of St. Jude Academy in the upper corner. I saw it among the mail when the mail carrier slid it through the door slot, but I made no move to pick it up. Instead, I continued watering my plants in the garden, waiting. I did not have to wait long. Sharon returned from her yoga class at noon, picked up the mail, and went into the kitchen, distractedly checking the letters. I heard her open the envelope, followed by a brief silence, and then a choked exclamation. "What the heck is this?" Her voice had a tone I had never heard before. Pure panic. I continued with my plants, counting mentally. 1, 2, 3. "Mary?" Sharon appeared at the garden door, the colour drained from her face, the paper trembling in her hand. "Mary, have you seen this?" I straightened up slowly, taking off my gardening gloves. Sharon held out the letter to me as if it were a venomous snake. "The school says Leo's tuition has not been paid, that we have accumulated 3 months of arrears, and that if we do not pay immediately, he will have to leave the centre." I took the letter and read it calmly, although I already knew exactly what it said. "How strange," I commented, handing the paper back to her. "Strange? It is a disaster. There must be some bank error. We have to fix it immediately." "You should call the bank," I suggested. "I already tried, but they say they need to speak with the account holder who makes the payments." Her voice trembled slightly. "Robert is on his way. He will know what to do." I turned back to my plants. "I am sure he will." Half an hour later, Robert arrived in a fury. He entered the garden like a tornado, the letter crumpled in his fist. "Mum, we have an emergency. The bank says the school payments have been cancelled." I took off my gardening gloves and looked directly at him. "They have not been cancelled, Robert. I cancelled them." The silence that followed was absolute. Sharon, who had followed Robert into the garden, gasped. "You what?" Robert finally managed to articulate. "I cancelled the payments," I repeated calmly, "about 2 weeks ago." But why would you do something like that?" Sharon stammered. "Do you know what this means for Leo?" "Yes," I replied. "It means his parents will have to pay for his education, as they should have been doing from the beginning." Robert looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about, Mom? We have always paid for Leo's education." "No," I said firmly. "I have paid for it. For 3 years, you have been taking $3,000 monthly from my account for Leo's school, plus another $1,500 a month for his extracurricular activities, summer camps, and tutoring." The colour drained from Robert's face. Sharon clung to the doorframe. That is not," Robert began. "True," I finished for him. "Come on, honey. Do not insult my intelligence on top of my generosity. I have seen the bank statements. Everything is documented." "It was an agreement," he finally said, his voice firmer. "We agreed you would help with Leo's expenses in exchange for living here." "I never agreed to any such thing," I responded. "You asked me to sign some papers to organize my finances. You never mentioned that you would be emptying my savings to pay for an elite school you could not afford." Sharon stepped forward, her face now red. "How dare you? After everything we have done for you." "Everything you have done for me?" I repeated incredulously. Do you mean allowing me to live in a house I helped buy, letting me cook, clean, iron, and take care of Leo for free, treating me like a servant instead of a member of this family? That is not fair, Robert protested. We love you. You are part of this family. A family does not laugh when a child slaps his grandmother, I replied, my voice firm but soft. A family does not plan to sell the house without consulting the person who helped buy it. Robert turned even paler. How do you know? I know many things, I interrupted, including how much my respect is worth. Sharon stepped forward, her expression changing from anger to calculation. Come on, Mary. I am sure we can work this out. It has been a misunderstanding. There is nothing to work out, I responded. I have made my decision. From now on, I will only pay for myself, for my food, my expenses, my share of the utilities. Nothing more. And Leo? Robert asked. What about his education? Leo is your son. His education is your responsibility. But we cannot afford that school without your help, Sharon exclaimed. Then you will have to look for another school, I replied simply. There are excellent public schools in the neighborhood. Sharon looked at me as if I had suggested sending Leo to a coal mine. Public school? Are you crazy? Do you know what our friends will say? That is your problem, not mine, I replied. I am done financing a lifestyle you cannot afford while you treat me as if I were invisible. I took off my gardening apron and hung it on its hook. And now, if you will excuse me, I have an appointment with my lawyer. Lawyer? Robert repeated. Mum, we do not need lawyers. We are family. I turned to him, holding his gaze. Yes, we are family. And that is precisely why I expected better from you. Trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. I walked towards the house, passing between them. Sharon looked like a statue, frozen by shock. Robert had the look of a child who had just discovered that actions have consequences. In my room, I gathered my purse and the folder with the documents I had prepared for the lawyer. They included the bank statements, my contribution to the house purchase, and detailed notes on the family dynamics of recent years. As I went down the stairs, I heard Sharon and Robert arguing in low, tense voices in the kitchen. How could you let this happen? I did not think she would find out. What are we going to do now? I left without saying goodbye. The Chicago sun was shining in a clear sky, and for the first time in years, I walked with my head held high, my steps firm and determined. Leo's slap had been the catalyst, but this confrontation was the real turning point. There was no going back now. As I waited for the bus that would take me to Isabel Thompson's office, I remembered the words my mother always repeated to me. Better late than never, honey. At my 66 years, I was finally learning to be the protagonist of my own life. The house on Botanicals Canyon Street dawned in a thick silence, as if the air itself had frozen after the confrontation. 3 days had passed since my meeting with the lawyer Isabel Thompson, and the tension was so palpable that it could almost be seen, like a fog floating between the rooms. Isabel had been clear and direct. You have rights, Mary. You contributed financially to the purchase of this house. You have maintained the family for years, and they cannot simply sell you with the property as if you were just another piece of furniture. Her words had given me an invisible armor, a shield against the accusing glances that now followed me around the house. Sharon had opted for the strategy of absolute silence. She passed by me as if I were air, entered rooms, and immediately left if she found me there. She only spoke to me through Leo or Robert, as if I had suddenly become deaf as well as invisible. Ask your grandma if she needs anything from the supermarket, she would say to Leo in my presence, without looking at me. For his part, Robert alternated between contained rage, clumsy attempts at manipulation, and moments of genuine confusion. Mum, I do not understand why you are doing this, he had told me the night before, finding me in the kitchen preparing my herbal tea. We have always been a close family. A family where some give and others take is not a close family, honey, I had responded. It is a parasitic relationship. His face had winced, as if I had slapped him. The truths sometimes hurt more than physical blows. Leo was the one who worried me most in this whole situation. At his 8 years, he observed the sudden change in the family dynamic with wide eyes and questions no one seemed willing to answer. I sometimes found him looking at me from the doorway of my room, as if studying a stranger who had replaced his docile grandmother. "Grandma, are you mad at me?" he asked me that morning while I was watering the pots by my window. I put down the watering can and turned to him. His small face showed a mix of confusion and fear that broke my heart. "No, honey," I said, kneeling down to his level. "I am not mad at you. But you do not take me to the park anymore, or make me cookies, and Mum and Dad are always mad." I sighed. Children are always the innocent victims of adult dramas. Older people sometimes have disagreements we need to resolve, I explained. It is like when you and your friend Mark argued over the new toy. Remember? You were mad for a few days, but then you sorted it out. Leo nodded, although he did not seem convinced. "Is it because I hit you?" he asked in a small voice. "Dad says I was just playing." I felt a lump in my throat. "Do you think hitting someone is playing, Leo?" I asked, holding his gaze. His eyes widened in alarm. "No, that would hurt." "That is right. And it hurt me too when you hit me. But what hurt me most was that your dad laughed, and your mum said I should hit you back." Leo remained silent, processing my words. "We must all treat each other with respect," I continued gently. "Even grandmothers deserve respect, you know?" He nodded slowly. Then, to my surprise, he stepped forward and hugged me. A small, brief hug. But I felt that something important had just happened between us. "Can I help you with the plants?" he asked. "Of course," I smiled. "These daisies need fresh water." While Leo carefully poured water into the pots, the doorbell rang. From my room, I heard Sharon open it. "Good morning," a man's voice, which I immediately recognized, said. "I am looking for Mary, and you are—" Sharon's tone was cold and cutting. "Anthony Fuller, your neighbor." "Wait here," Sharon replied curtly. A few moments later, Sharon appeared at my bedroom door, her expression tense. "Your friend is downstairs." "Thank you, Sharon," I responded calmly. "Leo, keep watering the plants. I will be right back." I went downstairs to find Anthony in the hallway, visibly uncomfortable under Sharon's scrutinizing gaze. She had returned to her chores, but was clearly watching us. "Good morning, Anthony," I greeted him. "What brings you here?" His face lit up when he saw me. "Good morning, Mary. I came to invite you. The reading group has organized a trip for this Saturday to Cape Cod. The bus leaves at 8 o'clock in the morning and returns at night. We will visit the old lighthouse and tour the historic district. I thought you would like to come." I felt Sharon's gaze burning into my neck. "That sounds wonderful," I replied. "I would love to go." "Perfect," Anthony smiled. "I will pick you up at 7:30 if that is all right." "We had better meet at the bus stop," I suggested, aware of the tense atmosphere. "That way you do not have to go out of your way." Anthony seemed to understand. "Whatever you prefer. Until Saturday, then." Until Saturday. When I closed the door after him, Sharon wasted no time. "Now you are going on a trip with your boyfriend?" she asked, with a mixture of mockery and disbelief. "Anthony is not my boyfriend," I replied calmly. "He is my friend. And yes, I am going on a trip with him and 15 other people from the book club." "Right, just when Leo needs you most," she said, shaking her head. "Leo is perfectly fine," I replied. "And if you and Robert need help with him on Saturday, you can always pay a babysitter. Or, surprise, you can do what parents are expected to do, take care of your own child." I turned and went up the stairs before she could reply. Back in my room, I found Leo kneeling next to my plants with spilled water on the floor and an expression of panic. "I am sorry, Grandma. I dropped the watering can. A few weeks ago, I would have rushed to clean up the mess, perhaps with a sigh of exasperation, but without further comment. Today, I saw an opportunity. 'It is no big deal,' I said. 'Let us clean it up together. I will show you how.' And so we spent the next half hour, grandmother and grandson, cleaning together, talking about plants and about how things that break can sometimes be fixed. Or sometimes you just have to let them go and start something new. That night, while the house slept, I opened my blue notebook under the light of my bedside lamp. Today I said no, I wrote, and I also said yes, and both decisions have made me feel more alive than in years. St. Jude Academy sent a second notice. This time it was not a simple letter, but an official communication. Leo Wilson Fuller was suspended from attendance until the payment of the 3 months owed, plus the late penalty, was regularized. The news dropped like a bomb in the house. Sharon went from ignoring me to giving me murderous looks every time we crossed paths. Robert, on the other hand, seemed to have moved to a negotiation phase. "Mum," he approached me one afternoon while I was reading in the garden. "We have been thinking. If the problem is that you feel undervalued in this house, we can change that. Sharon can take care of more household chores. I can spend more time with you on weekends." I looked at him over my reading glasses. "And what about the money, Robert? The more than $150,000 you have taken from my account without my informed consent?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture he always made when he felt cornered. "Well, that is complicated right now. The business is not doing as well as it seems. We have investments that are not yet yielding fruit, loans to pay." "Then you have a problem," I replied, returning to my book, "one that is not my responsibility to solve. Are you really going to let your grandson suffer for this?" His tone was between pleading and accusatory. "Do you not care about his education?" "What?" I closed the book calmly. "I care very much about Leo's education, and I also care about him learning values. What do you think you are teaching him when you show him that it is okay to cheat his grandmother? That it is okay to live above your means at the expense of others? That it is okay to laugh when someone slaps an older woman?" Robert had no answer for that. The next day, a Friday, Leo did not go to school. I heard Sharon explain that he was on a special vacation while they prepared his new school. The lie was well-intentioned, but inadequate. Leo was not stupid. "Why do I have to change schools, Mum?" I heard him ask. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, honey," Sharon replied, her voice strained. "It is just that sometimes families have to adjust to new circumstances." Later that same day, I saw Robert leave with a folder of documents. He returned hours later with a defeated expression. "Is it done?" he said to Sharon in the kitchen, unaware that I was listening from the hallway. "I have enrolled him at Lincoln Public School. He starts Monday." "A public school?" Sharon's voice was almost a shriek. "Do you know what my friends will say, my sisters? Leo's whole family has gone to private schools for generations." "And what do you want me to do, Sharon?" Robert burst out. "Conjure money out of thin air? Your lifestyle led us to this. The Miami vacations, the club membership, your closet full of designer clothes." "My lifestyle?" Sharon interrupted, indignant. "What about your new car? Your business dinners at fancy restaurants?" Their argument continued, voices rising and then lowering when they remembered Leo might hear them. I remained in the shadows of the hallway, processing the truth that was finally emerging. They had been living a lie, a facade of prosperity built on my money. Saturday dawned bright and clear, perfect for an outing. I dressed with care, comfortable pants, a blue cotton blouse that Henry had always loved, and a straw hat to protect me from the sun. When I went down the stairs with my small backpack, Sharon was in the kitchen preparing breakfast for Leo. "I will be back tonight," I announced, "around 10 o'clock. Sharon barely nodded, without looking at me. Leo, however, ran towards me. "Where are you going, Grandma?" "On a trip to Cape Cod with my friends from the book club." His eyes lit up. "Are you going to see the lighthouse? I have seen pictures in my history book. Will you bring me a picture?" "Of course," I smiled, touched by his enthusiasm. Sharon finally turned around. "Be careful," she said curtly. "At your age, those walks can be exhausting." "At my age," I replied with a serene smile, "I know exactly what I am capable of. Have a good day." The trip was like a breath of fresh air, literally and metaphorically. The book club group turned out to be a charming mix of people, from retirees like Anthony and me to college students passionate about history. We walked through the cobblestone streets of Cape Cod, admired the views of the Atlantic from the top of the lighthouse, and ate at a small restaurant where the lobster roll was to die for. "You look different, Mary," Anthony commented as we shared a dessert. "More radiant." "I feel different," I admitted, as if I had been asleep for years and were finally waking up. It is a wonderful feeling, is it not, rediscovering yourself after so much time? I nodded, understanding that Anthony had also gone through his own journey of rediscovery after becoming a widower. "Do you know what is strangest?" I reflected. For years, I thought sacrificing myself for my family was a sign of love. Now I realize that in a way, I was doing them a disservice. I was teaching them that my time, my energy, and my resources had no value, that I had no value. "Self-respect is the most important gift we can give to those we love," Anthony said. "It shows them how they should treat us, but also how they should treat themselves." When I returned home that night, my heart full of new experiences and friendships, I found Leo waiting for me in the living room, fighting sleep. "Grandma, did you bring me the picture?" I smiled and took out my phone. "Even better. I have lots of photos. And this." I handed him a small wooden knight I had bought at the souvenir shop. His eyes lit up. "Thank you, Grandma." "You are welcome, honey. Now, should you not be in bed?" "I wanted to wait for you." He yawned. "No one knew when you would be back." I looked around. "Where are your parents?" "Dad is in his office working. Mum went out with her friends. She said she needed to clear her head." Typical. They were concerned about me, but not enough to cancel their own plans. "Come on, I will take you to bed." As I tucked Leo in, I realized something important. My new path of self-discovery did not have to mean abandoning the love I felt for my grandson. I could set boundaries with the adults in the house and still be a loving presence in Leo's life. The next morning, Robert found me in the kitchen preparing pancakes, a Sunday treat that had always been a tradition in our family. "Smells good?" he commented cautiously, as if testing the waters. "Thanks," I replied. "Sit down. They are almost ready." He sat, watching me with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Mum, I do not understand what is happening. One minute you seem furious with us, cutting off the money for Leo's school, and the next you are making pancakes as if nothing has changed." I placed a plate of hot pancakes in front of him, along with a bowl of thick maple syrup. "Many things have changed, Robert, but some remain the same. I am still your mother. I still love you, even if I do not approve of your actions. And on Sundays, we still deserve pancakes." He stared at the plate, then at me, as if seeing a stranger. "I enrolled Leo in a public school yesterday," he finally said. "I know. I heard you talking to Sharon. It will be a big change for him." "Children are more adaptable than we think," I replied. "And education is not just about pretty buildings and expensive uniforms. It is about values, curiosity, and a love for knowledge." "Sharon is devastated," he added. "She says she will not be able to look her friends in the face." "That is Sharon's problem," I said simply. "And her friends, not mine, or yours, or Leo's." Robert dipped a pancake in the syrup thoughtfully. "I have never seen you like this, Mum. So self-assured, so firm." I smiled. "I have always been like this, honey. I just forgot it for a while." At that moment, Leo ran into the kitchen, drawn by the aroma. "Pancakes!" he exclaimed with delight. I served him a plate, watching father and son share the Sunday breakfast. Sharon joined later, looking glum and with evident hangover symptoms, but even she could not resist the family tradition. As I watched them interact, I understood that we were all on different paths now. I did not know exactly where they would lead us, but for the first time in years, I felt hope. Not the naive hope that everything would go back to how it was, but the realistic hope that we could build something new, something better, based on mutual respect and honesty. Leo's first day at his new school arrived and passed with less drama than we all expected. Sharon, who had threatened not to be able to bear the humiliation, finally mustered the courage and accompanied him to the door, hiding behind large sunglasses as if afraid of being recognized. To everyone's surprise, Leo returned enthusiastic. "Grandma, there are kids from everywhere in my class. There is a kid from China and a girl who speaks French, and another who knows incredible magic tricks," he exclaimed, dropping his backpack on the kitchen floor. "It sounds like you had a good first day," I smiled, genuinely relieved. "The best. And the teacher, Miss Lucy, is super cool. She says we are going to do a project on the different cultures in the class." Sharon, listening from the doorway, seemed baffled by her son's enthusiasm. "And the facilities?" she asked cautiously. "The classroom is clean." Leo looked at her in confusion. "Yeah, Mum, everything is clean. And they have a huge library, much bigger than St. Jude's, and a playground with real trees, not just concrete." Sharon's expression was priceless, a mixture of relief and bewilderment, as if the world she had feared so much turned out to be completely different from her expectations. The following days brought a new routine to the house. Robert left early, earlier than before, clearly avoiding confrontation. Sharon alternated between outings with friends, notably less frequent than before, and long periods locked in her room, supposedly working on her fashion blog, although I suspected she was more likely dealing with her new social reality. Leo, however, was thriving. Every day he returned with new stories, new drawings, new enthusiasms. One afternoon, while I was watering my jasmine in the garden, I found him sitting on the stone bench, concentrated on a drawing pad. "What are you drawing, honey?" I asked, sitting beside him. He quickly covered his work with his hands. "It is a surprise. You cannot look until it is finished." "Okay," I smiled, respecting his space. "I will be in the kitchen when you are ready to show me." Half an hour later, Leo entered the kitchen, holding his drawing to his chest. His expression was solemn, almost nervous. "Are you ready to see my drawing, Grandma?" "Of course," I replied, drying my hands on my apron. With slow, deliberate movements, he handed me the sheet of paper. On it, with bright crayon strokes, he had drawn two figures holding hands under a radiant yellow sun. One was clearly him, with his characteristic messy hair. The other was me, recognizable by my blue dress and garden hat. Between us was a red heart, and at the top, in uneven child's letters, he had written, "I am sorry, Grandma." I felt my heart simultaneously expand and contract. "It is beautiful, Leo," I said, fighting back the tears that threatened to overflow my eyes. "Miss Lucy talked to us today about respect," he said, his voice small but clear. "She said all people deserve to be treated with dignity, no matter if they are young or old, men or women, from here or another country." I nodded, unable to speak because of the lump in my throat. "And then she asked us if we had ever disrespected anyone," he continued, "and I remembered when I hit you, Grandma, and how Dad laughed, and how Mum said those ugly things. And I felt really bad." I put the drawing on the table and knelt in front of him, taking his small hands in mine. "You know what, Leo? That is the bravest thing I have heard in a long time. Acknowledging our mistakes takes more courage than pretending they never happened." "So you forgive me?" His eyes were big and anxious. "I forgive you completely," I replied, hugging him tightly, "and I am very, very proud of you." What neither of us had noticed was that Robert was in the kitchen doorway watching the whole scene. When I finally became aware of his presence, I saw something on his face that I had not seen in years. Vulnerability. And perhaps shame. Our eyes met over Leo's head, and in that brief moment of silent connection, I saw the recognition in his eyes. The recognition that his 8-year-old son had just shown more emotional maturity than he had. Without saying a word, he turned and disappeared down the hallway. But something had changed. I felt it as clearly as I felt Leo's small body in my arms, trembling slightly with the emotion of reconciliation. That night, I placed Leo's drawing on my bedside table, framed in an old silver picture frame. It was more than a child's drawing. It was a bridge of colour stretched over the abyss of misunderstandings and disrespect that had divided our family, and for the first time, I glimpsed the possibility that we could all cross it. The change began subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. One morning, Robert picked up his coffee mug and took it to the sink, instead of leaving it on the table for me to collect. One afternoon, Sharon offered to make dinner, although her idea of cooking consisted of heating up pre-made food. Small, clumsy gestures. Attempts at what? Reconciliation? Remorse? Or simply the pragmatic acceptance that things had changed? A week after the drawing incident, Robert approached me while I was folding laundry in the living room. "Mum, I was wondering if we could talk," he said, his voice unusually hesitant. "Of course," I replied, placing the last t-shirt on the pile. "What is it about?" "Not here," he said, looking towards the staircase where Sharon could appear at any moment. "I have made a reservation at the local catch for tonight. Just us." The local catch was the restaurant where we used to celebrate special occasions when Robert was a child. The place where we celebrated his graduation, his first job, his engagement to Sharon. The fact that he chose that place for our conversation did not go unnoticed. "All right," I accepted. "What time?" "At 8 o'clock. I will pick you up." That night, I dressed with care, not to impress, but to arm myself. A navy blue dress, the pearl necklace Henry had given me for our silver anniversary, the soft perfume I reserved for special occasions, my emotional armor. Robert was punctual, something rare for him lately. He opened the car door for me with a formality that reminded me of the nervous teenager who once took his first date out to dinner at our house. The local catch was still the same cozy place as always, with its checkered tablecloths, its walls covered with old photographs of Chicago, and the irresistible aroma of authentic seafood gumbo. We sat at a corner table, away from the central bustle. After ordering, Robert fiddled with his napkin, clearly searching for how to begin. "Mum, there is something I need to confess," he finally said. "I am listening," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. He took a deep breath. "We are broke." It was not what I expected to hear. "Broke? What do you mean?" "My business is not doing well. It has not been doing well for years, actually," he admitted, avoiding my gaze. "Asian imports plummeted during the pandemic, and we never fully recovered. I have been keeping up appearances, pretending everything was fine, taking out loans to cover other loans, and using my money," I added softly. He nodded, his face flushed with shame. "And using your money. At first, I told myself it would only be a temporary loan, that I would pay you back as soon as things improved. But they never improved." The waiter brought our drinks, momentarily interrupting the confession. When he left, Robert continued. "Sharon does not know the whole truth. She knows there are problems, but not how serious it is. We have been living far beyond our means, her social circle, her friends. It is all based on maintaining a certain image." "And now?" I asked. "What happens now that you no longer have access to my money?" He ran a hand over his face, a gesture that painfully reminded me of Henry when he was overwhelmed. "Now we have to face reality. Selling the house is the only option left for us to pay off the debts and start over." So that was why they had prepared the appraisal. It was not just greed, as I had supposed, but desperation. "And where do I fit into that plan?" I asked. "That is the problem, Mum. I do not know," he admitted. "Before all this, we thought of offering you a portion of the sale money so you could find a small apartment or maybe a retirement community, one of those with activities and medical care." "A retirement community," I repeated, feeling a chill run down my spine. At my 66 years, in perfect physical and mental health, as if I were a burden to be gotten rid of. "We did not frame it like that," he hurried to say. "We thought it would be best for everyone, that you would be more comfortable with people your own age." "Did it ever occur to you to ask me what I wanted?" I interrupted. "Did you ever see me as a person with my own desires, or just as a convenient asset that financed your lifestyle and took care of your son for free?" He lowered his gaze to his untouched plate. "I am sorry, Mum. I really am sorry. I have been selfish, blind, and a bad son." The waiter arrived with our gumbo plates, the delicious aroma rising in spirals of steam. Neither of us made a move to start eating. "What are you going to do now?" I finally asked. "I do not know," he admitted. "We will probably have to sell the house anyway, move to something much smaller, completely change our lives. Sharon will have to find a job. We can no longer afford for her to be a full-time influencer with no real income." "And Leo?" Curiously, a small smile appeared on Robert's face. "He seems to be the only one handling the changes well. He loves his new school. He says the kids are more real there." I finally picked up my fork and tasted the gumbo. It was delicious, as always, the flavor of the seafood momentarily transporting me to simpler times. "Robert," I said after a few moments of silence, "I cannot say I completely forgive you. What you did, using my money without my real consent, was not just a lack of respect. It was a breach of trust." He nodded, accepting my words without defending himself. "But you are my son, and despite everything, I love you," I continued. "I cannot fix your financial problems, nor should I. But perhaps we can find a solution that works for everyone." "What kind of solution?" he asked, a glimmer of hope illuminating his tired eyes. "I do not know yet," I replied honestly. "But what I do know is that any solution must be based on mutual respect, on treating each other as equal adults, not as a sacrificing mother and an entitled son." "That is fair," he said softly. "And there is another condition," I added. "I need you to be completely honest with Sharon about the financial situation. No more secrets, no more pretense. If we are going to rebuild this family, it must be on a foundation of truth." Robert turned pale at the mention of total honesty with Sharon, but finally nodded. "I will do it," he promised. "Tonight." We finished our dinner talking about lighter topics. Leo's progress in school, my new friendships in the book club, shared memories of happier times. It was not a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. A small bridge extended over the abyss, following Leo's example. When we returned home, Sharon was waiting for us in the living room, her expression a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Can I talk to you privately?" Robert asked her. I saw her tense up, as if preparing for a battle, but she nodded and followed him into the office, closing the door behind them. I retired to my room, but even through the walls, I could hear fragments of their conversation. Robert's voice, low and constant. Sharon's rising in disbelief, then anger, finally breaking into sobs. It was the sound of truth emerging, painful but necessary. That night, I wrote in my blue notebook, "Honesty is like surgery. It hurts, but it heals." A month passed, then two. The Chicago summer reached its peak, bathing the city in a golden heat that seemed to slide like honey over the streets and buildings. In our garden, the jasmine Anthony had given me bloomed exuberantly, intertwining with the branches of Henry's apple tree in a living metaphor of new beginnings rooted in cherished memories. The changes in the house on Botanical's Canyon Street were not just visible, but tangible. They could be felt in the air, in the way the inhabitants moved and communicated. Sharon had found work as an assistant in a downtown boutique. At first, she had taken it as a humiliation, a descent from her self-proclaimed influencer status. But to everyone's surprise, including her own, she discovered she enjoyed real work, the contact with customers, the satisfaction of an honestly earned salary. "I helped a woman find the perfect dress for her daughter's wedding today," she told me one night as we prepared dinner together. She cried with emotion when she looked in the mirror. It was nice. It was the first time I had heard her talk about her job with genuine enthusiasm, not as a performance for her social media followers. Robert had liquidated his import company and found employment with a logistics company. The salary was modest compared to his supposed previous income, but it was stable and real. Every night he reviewed bills and budgets at the kitchen table, slowly building a plan to get out of the debts he had accumulated. "It will take years," he had confessed to me, "but for the first time, I feel like I am doing the right thing." The house was still for sale, but the real estate market had entered a slowdown phase, giving us an unexpected reprieve. Time to plan the future more carefully. Leo, for his part, was unrecognizable. The spoiled, slightly arrogant child had given way to a curious and considerate boy. His new school, with its diversity of students and its focus on values like respect and empathy, was having a profound effect on him. Every night, without fail, he came to my room with a book. "Can we read together, Grandma?" he would ask, and we would spend half an hour sharing adventures, learning, and laughter. As for me, my life had blossomed in ways I never would have imagined just a few months ago. My friendship with Anthony had deepened, although it remained in the territory of friendship, despite Sharon's speculations. The book club had become the highlight of my week, and I had added a painting workshop to my activities. The lawyer Isabel Thompson had helped me reorganize my financial affairs. I now had completely independent bank accounts, an updated will, and a clear understanding of my rights to the house. One late August afternoon, while we were all enjoying lemonade in the garden, Robert cleared his throat, gaining our attention. "I have news," he announced. "Good news, I think." Sharon, Leo, and I looked at him expectantly. "I spoke with the bank. They are willing to refinance our debt on more favorable terms, which means we might not have to sell the house after all." Sharon let out a small cry of joy. Leo applauded. "But," Robert continued, "we would have to make some changes, live more modestly, and we would need to rent out a part of the house to generate additional income." "Rent out?" Sharon repeated. "Do you mean having strange tenants living with us?" "Not exactly," Robert said, looking at me. "I was thinking more about converting the ground floor into an independent apartment for Mum." All eyes turned to me. "Your own apartment," Robert continued, "with a separate entrance, kitchen, everything you need. You would pay a fair rent, much less than a similar apartment would cost on the market. You would have your independence, but we would still be family. And Leo could still see you daily." I was speechless for a moment, analyzing the proposal. It was not perfect, but it was a compromise born of respect, not unilateral convenience. "And," Sharon added, surprising me, "we could document everything legally. A real lease that protects your rights." "What do you say, Mum?" Robert asked. "Do you think it could work?" I looked around. At the garden that had been reborn under my care, at Henry's apple tree that continued to bear fruit, at the jasmine that perfumed the summer nights. "I think," I said slowly, "that it could be a good start." Leo came closer and took my hand. "I want you to stay, Grandma. It would not be the same without you." I smiled, touched by his sincerity. "Thank you, honey. I want to stay close to you too." "Then it is decided," Robert said. "We will start the renovations as soon as possible." "With one condition," I added. "I want to participate in the design, and I want a door that leads directly to the garden." "Of course," Robert agreed. "It is your space." That night, as the temperature finally began to drop, we organized a small celebration in the garden. Anthony joined us, bringing a bottle of wine and his warm smile. Doris, my friend from the market, came with her husband. Even Miss Lucy, Leo's teacher, accepted our invitation. Sharon, to everyone's surprise, had prepared a seafood gumbo. It was not perfect. The rice was a little overcooked, and she had forgotten the safflower, but the gesture meant more than the result. As the sun began to set, I took out the small solar lamps I had bought weeks ago, placing them strategically among the garden plants. As the natural light diminished, the lamps came to life one by one, like magical fireflies among the leaves. "It is beautiful, Grandma," Leo whispered beside me, "like a fairy garden." "It is the new light," I told him, hugging him. "Sometimes we can only see the stars when it gets a little dark." Later, when the guests had left and Leo was asleep, exhausted from all the excitement, I sat on the garden bench, enjoying the quiet of the Chicago night. Robert came out and sat silently beside me. "Thank you, Mum," he said after a while. "For what?" "For not giving up on us, for teaching us a hard but necessary lesson." I took his hand. remembering the little boy he once was, the one who clung to me after Henry's death, seeking security in a suddenly unstable world. You know, I said softly, that slap Leo gave me. It hurt, but it also woke me up. It made me see what we had allowed our family to become. I know, he replied. It woke me up too, although it took me longer to recognize it. In the shared silence that followed, I felt that something was healing between us. Not everything, not completely, but it was a start. The small garden lights shone softly around us, reflecting on the bright leaves of Henry's apple tree. I could almost feel his presence, his silent approval. Dignity is priceless, he had always said. And finally, after so many years, I had found the courage to prove it. The night embraced Chicago with its starry mantle, and in our small corner of the world, a family was beginning, imperfectly but sincerely, to rebuild itself on more solid foundations of respect, truth, and love. The slap that almost destroyed us had unexpectedly become the slap that saved us, the end.